Actually, Dan back there's looking for senior. All right, go catch him, Dan. That's perfect time.
Yeah, I'm here for you, man.
Great, thanks. And I'm off to a stellar start.
I've got shirts, balls, flashbacks.
Blind them before you throw the ball.
Exactly.
So yeah, speakers today, you know, what's up with them? They don't bring their laptops, they show up and then just leave with no words. We don't need them in here, actually. What's my password? Actually, I told somebody in IRC that, oh no, that was somebody else, never mind. That was elsewhere. Remember this for me, because I can never seem to remember it. No, not this time. Sorry, we were watching Henry Rollins. Apparently I left a CD in here. Sorry. So this morning we were watching Henry Rollins before we actually came. You know, inspiration. I'll try not to swear as much as him. Hello.
It should turn on. I see it on here. It's just the projector takes them.
Okay, warm up. There we go. I mean, this I was actually sharing it to my laptop, but it's not. So now I'm trying to find where the slide deck is. Where's my mouse? Okay, so anyways, this is actually a Linux system. A little bit about me, I'm a network engineer. I've been doing network administration, or network engineering since the 90s. I've been doing Linux administration almost as long. Presentations. So sorry about the late start, everybody. Okay, so yeah, it's free. So intro to Linux hardening. Why does this matter? What is it about? And why are we doing it? So who am I? My name is Rattis. Some of you guys have probably seen me in the Lockpick Village. I'm the guy that runs Ann Arbor Tool. My name is Jenks. I've been a network engineer since 1996. I've been a Linux administrator since 1998. My work has been mostly in telco and other large industries like that. I was a senior engineer at my last company. I am a network engineer in healthcare at this point. So what is this talk? This talk is a basic 101 level talk. I expect people to have a basic understanding of Linux at this point. You have heard what BackTrack is. You may have downloaded BackTrack and actually played around with it some. I expect that you have at least learned a handful of Linux shell commands, ls, cat, ps, stuff along those lines. You know what mounting a hard drive is, you know what mounting your path is, you know how to move through the path. This talk is not going to be a high-level talk. It's not going to be, this is what you do to be the coolest person on the block. It is just to get you started. And where did this talk come from? The few times I've done penetration testing have actually been off of Windows machines. But this talk actually came out of two different things. One was a conversation with Rogue Clown and BoostSec. We were talking on IRC one night about people's hacking habits and some events that had happened at CTF. Did a CTF with MySec at one point, and while we were getting ready and everything was ready, the more experienced hackers in the group decided to see what everybody else was running. So they started running scans and pen tests against their own teammates. You know, we're waiting around. What were we supposed to do? Yeah, yay. So we were talking about that. And then Rogue Crown brought up when she first got into penetration testing, she got pwned a few times by the system administrators. They saw her log onto the system with a BT box. They logged in as root, shut her down. And BoostSec works at a university, and he does pretty much the same thing. He's the network administrator in charge of their security. And when you see somebody in the DHCP logs logged in with a BT box, he logs in as root and shuts it down. Who here listens to Paul.com? Okay, got a couple of hands. Anybody else know what Paul.com is? Okay, so Paul.com is a security-based podcast. They have a lot of pen testers on their show. I want to say it was May. No, it wasn't May. When was it? It was recently. It was just before CCDC. They actually had an entire episode dedicated to hardening your systems and what to do to keep the people trying to pen test you out. So CCDC, you have blue teams. You're trying to defend your systems against red teams. And a lot of the stuff that they were talking about there is actually I had already presented in the slides. So it's like, wow, you got Paul.com talking about, pen testers talking about what to do to protect your systems, and they're talking about the same thing I'm about to talk about. So I built a lab for this talk, and as you can see here, Whistler's the host. In fact, this box here is the Debian system. Everything else was an installed version of BackTrack on a portable hard drive. Everybody else was virtual BackTrack instance, Ubuntu desktop. I went with desktop over server. A lot of people are going to go out and install Ubuntu server. It didn't come with any default ports open. I want to show you and give you an example of a default system. And a lot of people, when they first get started, they're going to grab, hey, we need a server. And I've seen this in the real world. We need a server. They go grab Ubuntu desktop, because it's what they use at home, and install it on a server and start running services. And lastly was CentOS. Last place where I did a lot of Linux administration, we used CentOS almost across the board. So when you do a basic install of CentOS, what's open? So in this case, I've actually looked at the open ports. I've run nmap from an external server to it. And we see that port 22 is open, which I actually opened myself so I could control it from a separate system. And make it easier because I couldn't do screenshots from the console. And what's this? RPC bind, TCP port 111. I didn't say anything, didn't tell anything to open on that. So that is actually part of the base install. Looking at Ubuntu, actually looking at looking at CentOS itself from the command line, that's everything that's open. You've got way more that's showing up outside. SSH, you have cups. Just a lot of stuff that doesn't really need to be there. Same thing, looking at Ubuntu, I was actually more impressed with the default install. I had turned SSH on myself, so it showed up less than anything else. But when I looked inside, well, here's that port 631 again. And that happens to be cups, which is your printing daemon. If I'm putting it on a server, why does it need to be there? And then the ones that had the 0:::, and then the port number at the end, that's your IP6 stuff. So IP6 has been automatically turned on both systems. So don't just worry about IP4, worry about IP6 as well. So I want to turn off cups. My servers don't need a print daemon on them. I don't need it listening for something to print. There's no reason for it. It doesn't matter I'm tossing up a web server, a mail server. 99% of the time, I'm never going to print anything off this box. So let's turn it off. Under CentOS, you can use the service cup command or service status command. Put your daemon inside there and see what it's running. What's its status? Is it running? Is it started? Is it stopped? In this case, I turned it off. Check it. You can see it stopped. But I want to go beyond there. I want to actually not have this start up at boot time, so I don't have to worry about it ever again. Under CentOS and Red Hat, you can actually use check config to list what's running where. So at run level 1, it's off. Run level 0, it's off. 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are the ones that you're going to interact as a user. It's all turned on. Well, I don't like that, so I'm going to turn that off. So I run the levels command behind check config, tell it the process I want to kill, and then turn it off on those processes. And then you have another listing showing that it's off. It's going to stay off after the reboot. Doing this the Debian way. So I keep mentioning Ubuntu. It's based off of Debian. Normally, the command would be update rc.d, cups, and then status. In this case, disable. Unfortunately, Ubuntu has made some changes off of stock Debian, and you actually have to go in and change configuration files by hand. Another option is to actually just remove it, but it's going to remove more packages than what you really want. So that takes care of turning the processes off, but I'll still show up if somebody tries sweeping my network or trying to sweep my system. So what I want to do is I want to put a firewall up. I want to drop their packets coming into me. So that's what I've done here. I've taken a basic drop output. So anything coming in is going to be dropped. Anything I'm sending out is going to be accepted. So the firewall is going to let my traffic go out, but it's not going to let anything come in. Now there is a problem with doing this way, but I'm not worried about that at this point. The problem would be if my system's been infected at some point in the past before I've actually turned it up, set everything else up, it's still going to do outbound traffic, and it's not going to do anything inbound. I'm going to set the same things up on my loopback interface. I'm going to say if I have an established state of any kind, if I started the traffic, I want the traffic to be able to come back into me. I want port 22 to work. I forgot this command the first time and locked myself out of all the systems because I scripted this out, and it's like, okay, start this up on start. Great, I can't get anything. Now I've got to go back over to my virtual server from the other room, type everything in, hit every box by hand. So if you're going to use SSH for anything, for port 22, make sure you actually open it and have it open before you start doing your drop statements. And then I want to see anything I've hit, anything that hits this filter and gets dropped, I want to see it in a log. I want to know what's going on when I'm not, even if I don't have the log up and running at real time, I want to be able to go back and look. And if it doesn't fit any of my previous parameters, I'm dropping it. It's going to get rejected. So I made a mistake, right? I need to turn off the firewall, start fresh. This is how you would actually turn it off. You can, again, script it and set it up in your startup config files. At the end of the talk, I will tell you where I found these. I've actually had to make some slight modifications. The original source material actually had some syntax errors that they didn't catch in their editing process. So I actually had to go back through and make some minor changes. But it's actually really easy to find both of these files online. So, okay, I mentioned when BackTrack comes up, it comes up with the name of BT. Well, other systems have defaults too. In this case, the CentOS default was what it asked me for. Okay, that's great. But every time I boot up, it's going to show up in DHCP if I'm pulling a DHCP address on the network. It's going to say, hey, I'm here. This is my box name. What's an IP address? Have you seen me before? No, it's an OK name. Same thing with the Debian desktop. So I want to change those. In the case of CentOS, I'm going to go into etc sysconfig network, and I'm going to change it at the hostname line. Debian or Ubuntu, I'm going to change it in under /se hostname and then restart my networking services. Now, some of the systems come with default passwords, some of them come with no passwords. Who here has used Ubuntu? Okay, and you know how everything is done via sudo, right? What do they do with the root password? Does anybody actually know? How is the root generated? Does it have a root password to start with?
Random.
It is completely random. But there's two problems with that. If something happens and I lose sudo access, I don't have a back way in to protect my own system. I don't have a back way in to work as an administrator on my own system. If I have something happen where it's still a password, I'd rather have it something I set, because I feel better about a password I make up, than letting somebody run John the Ripper against it, finding the hash and knowing the password when I don't. That's just me. So changing password is pretty simple. It's just the command password as root, and it'll ask you for your new password. Like I said, this is basic level, people. I know some of you guys are back there nodding off. It's OK. It's meant to be a boring talk. So I was talking about sudo, right? I want to add a new user to it. It's just sudo add you. Well, no, sorry, that's actually further down. Adding a new user. I need to add a new user. I don't like having. So in the case of CentOS, it was. Even though it says Ubuntu desktop here, in the case of CentOS, the only person that was installed was the root user. I don't want to do everything as root. There's too much of an issue doing typos. There's too much stuff that's just available for the access. And when I was setting up the screenshots, I just jumped back and forth to whatever system was most handy to type the commands into. These are basic level commands. So, you want to add another user. You want to add more users to the system so they're not doing things as root. They're not doing things as you. We were talking about SSH a little bit ago. A couple things that need to be changed. Most of the systems nowadays use SSH v2 by default, and that's actually part of the default config. These are the 3 things I change on every system I ever touch. If I'm responsible for the system, I'm turning off X forwarding, so they're not going to be able to log into it and then pull an X session back to them. I'm going to turn off TCP forwarding, and I'm going to turn off root login. So if you're trying to log in as root, I don't want you to do that. I want you to log in as a local user or a domain user, and then escalate to root when you need to. I don't want you starting there as default. Don't want people forwarding through my boxes if that box wasn't designed to be a proxy, if it wasn't designed to be a forwarding shell account. Apache. Basically, when it starts off, it listens on every single interface. Now, why does this matter for BT? If you're running Nessus, it will install a default Apache config, and it will set it up to listen on every single interface. Well, I don't like that. I just want to listen to local hosts, so I'm going to change that. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm making it so only the local host can access my Apache server. Mail. Yeah, you've got too many options of send mail, too many options of postfix, too many options of fixing. I'm not going to go into them. There's a lot of great material on the internet, really easy to find. And it'll tell you how to lock your mail service down this exact same way. And it's a case of I'm basing this off of CentOS and Ubuntu because those are going to be the boxes you're most likely going to find out there. One uses send mail, one uses postfix. I didn't want to include both, it just makes the talk even longer. So a few extras. What else am I going to do? I like getting emails on my logs of important data or information that hits a certain filter. So I'm going to install things like log check. I'm going to turn around, and what it does is it checks for anomalies and then mails those anomalies to the administrator. It's a really great tool. You can set it up on one server and have it forwarded to your POP account. You can have it forwarded to multiple accounts. It's really nice. I'm going to install things like Tripwire. So as soon as I've got this box set up, before I even put it on the internet, I'm pulling most of these packages out of my own repository so I know they're safe. And I'm going to set up Tripwire. It's going to run a database across the entire box, and every time a file changes, it'll tell you if it's in the monitoring system. So Tripwire will look at it and say, hey, this has changed, and it sends you an email when that happens. Actually, back one. Nope. A couple other things. There's a tool out there called Deny Hosts. I really like that Deny Hosts. My previous job, we had an instance where we had to share data with another company. It was their data that we were processing for them. But it was very sensitive data. Who here knows a Playboy? You guys are laughing, but that was the customer. It was very sensitive data. It was basically every copy of their magazine scanned electronically to our systems so they could create the Playboy DVD. And they've now taken that and moved it forward into a new product that's going to be coming out very soon for the iPad. We wanted to make sure people couldn't log into the system that weren't authorized to, and we didn't want to worry about brute forcers. So I use a tool called Deny Hosts. It's set up to actually deny your system based on how many times you failed logging in with sshd. Now there's other tools out there that do the exact same thing. Another really good one's Fail to Ban, and it watches more than just SSH. Did I need it for my time? No. Is it what I'd use today? Yes. Because on the Ratchet and Rogue server, I've got Fail to Ban set up. So if you've messed up too many times trying to log into my web page, which is a WordPress site, it's going to try locking you out because it's going to see the errors in the logs. So-and-so tried logging in an invalid password. I get emails on a regular basis of people locking out via SSH, trying to log into WordPress, and a couple other things I'm not going to talk about on that system. Because I don't want to invite people to try to break into my own stuff. And I don't want to have potential listeners banned if they're potential listeners at a B-size event. So what does this have to do with BackTrack? Why am I talking about basic Linux? Well, BackTrack is Linux. Who knows who Pure Hate is? Couple of hands. Pure Hate's actually one of the developers of BackTrack Linux. I happened to be in the ISD podcast channel at one point, and somebody was asking, what distribution do you use at a security conference? The person was looking for what system to build for Black Hat. Pure Hate replied back, because somebody said BT, and the quote is on the screen. BT is not meant to be a secure, or not meant to be secure. It is a security distro. not a secure distro. Now, what does that mean? It means that it's designed for people to test things. It's designed to be fast, quick, and dirty. Unfortunately, it leaks your data. Unfortunately, it gives the admins ways to get back into your own system and turn you off. So we've just been talking about all this stuff, and we're basically going to go back over it again. Now, there's a couple of things about when doing penetration tests, or CTFs, or whatever way you want to do this. I love live CDs. I love virtual environments. They're great for some uses. But if it's going to be a system I'm going to attack with on a regular basis, it's going to be a full install. I'm not going to put it on a virtual machine. They're nice, but they leak too much data. I'm not going to run it from a live USB or a live CD. They're nice, but it's too easy to leak your underlying data. So, some people are like, I'm safe enough with live DVD. That's great. Who here uses full disk encryption on their laptops? Not a lot of hands. Full disk encryption on their laptops. Okay, so you're running from a live CD. Get into your live CD, you can mount your local hard drive. I've got a bad habit of actually logging into my live CDs when I'm using them, and then mounting my encrypted hard drives, because I want the data that's on the underlying hard drive. If I have a direct install, I don't have to worry about that. And dual booting, again, leaks data. So talking about virtual systems, this is actually a packet capture off of Whistler. When I was doing this, actually no, this wasn't even Whistler. This was actually off the BackTrack box. And what I did is I started up Chrome on the host machine that was running the virtual lab. And that's all the data that popped out across the network, because it was a shared network interface. Now, what does that tell a network person that's watching their logs at 2 o'clock in the morning, or has some other kind of IDS set up at 2 o'clock in the morning? There's a lot of traffic going over the network when it shouldn't be there. When it's installed on a hard drive, that's what it'll look like. So you say, hey, what's your drive state? What's your information, right? And it gives you back your physical hardware. That's what it looks like on a virtual hard drive. Something to notice. Model name, VBox. Does that matter? Is that something you should care about? Let me tell you a quick story. Again, at a previous place I worked at, we had a deal with another company. We provided them a server. They were providing us a service. The software they were using actually uses a lot of processing power. Really, really hits the processing power. And we gave them a box big enough to do it. What was their policy? To install a virtualization software on top of it, and then put whatever processes need to run on top of it. The box kept crashing. They came over and said, Chris, here's an IP address. We need you to find out what's going on here. Why is this box crashing? It's strong enough for the software. We're using the exact same thing in our office. But when we're using it at the customer site, it's crashing left and right. First thing I did, logged in. What's the hardware state? And the first thing it listed listed that it was a virtual box. Virtual hard drive. It's like, well, is this supposed to be virtualized or physical hardware? And they just look at me funny. It's like, what do you mean? They virtualized the server and put the server on a virtual server. No, this is supposed to be using the real hardware. So small, it's things like this that I now know that the guy that's attacking my network has a virtual hard drive. I know there's an underlying OS, and there have been published attacks out there that will let you go down to the next layer and attack the host from the VM. But why would you want to do that? Well, if I'm trying to stop a hacker and you're on my network, you're fair game. So looking at disks, I've got a multi-boot system here. Look at all those nice juicy disks. Those are all things I can mount and find other information on. So, multi-boot kind of sucks. Again, default name for BackTrack is BT. You'll notice in the slides, the boxes are called Ashura and SD Challenger. My systems are usually named after submarines, and they usually have some kind of archaeological importance. SD Challenger was James Cameron's submarine that he used recently to hit Challenger Deep. Ashura was actually the first submarine ever used in underwater archaeology. So, change the name from BT to DS Challenger. Does that tell you anything? Does the last name tell you anything? Yes? No? Maybe? Is everybody sleeping now? So I'm leaking data here. I'm telling you, I'm a BackTrack box. If you're going through your DHCP files and you see this, oh, look, somebody's using BackTrack. If you've got a daemon set up to monitor your logs and watch for that, you'll know when they're on the network. But now it's just DS Challenger. What's that? Is that somebody's iPhone? Is that somebody's iPad? Is that some college students just walking by? Is that just some guy outside that happened to grab the same access point somehow? Somebody that likes submarines, yes. Again, we're changing the password. You know, when you first install BackTrack, it's root tor. So your login name is root, your password's tor. Well, if I don't change that and I start sshd or sshd gets started somehow, what happens? Somebody logs in. Then what? Whatever. Do they want to mount your hard drives? Do they just want to turn you off and make you go away? Do they want to send you nasty messages? We're calling the cops. They're on their way. You've just given them full control of your box. Change your passwords. Add a user. So I don't like the fact that BackTrack only has the root account in the beginning. I'd like to see more out of it. I'd like to see it when you install it, ask you to create an actual sub-user that you have to start as and then move up. But that's me doing Linux administration since '98, so. Okay, so I was talking about adding users to visudo. A lot of people go out to, when they do it, and this is when I was adding rattis to the visudo file for BackTrack. A lot of people just go out and say, oh, well, it works for root all. Well, that's great, but what if somebody gets into the rattis one because I actually messed up and used a weak password, like password, instead of something that's 32 characters long? In this case, all you can do is go to root or change user. Technically, that would be change user, but that's the only command that I can run as that user from that location. I can run other commands. I can run your basic bash commands. I can run pwd. I can run ls. I can do all that. But I can't do anything at the system level. I can't shut it down. I can't restart it. I can't change protected files. And this is what it looks like. It's locked down. Change back to the new user I created. Change to the home directory. Shows me my home directory. I say sudo show me my home directory. Sorry, not allowed to do that. Doesn't tell you what command you can run, it just says you can't do it. Okay, well, I don't like this box being here. I'm going to shut it down. Sudo, shut down my sh now. Sorry, Dave, I can't do that. Sorry, Dave, I can't do that. In case anybody didn't hear, you said sudo make me a sandwich. But sudo root. Now, it's not showing my password here because I was dropping in and out of root left and right, and in and out of root from sudo left and right. So it's already got my password cached, which I could actually turn off if I wanted. But I can go to root. And what are my open ports? So scanning from one box towards the other one. The only port that's open right now is the one that I opened, so I didn't have to keep walking back and forth between rooms. So, but even then, 22. I've seen BackTrack instances where it's turned on 22 by default. I've seen other ones where it's turned network on by default. And I've seen other ones where you have to turn both on by hand. I think currently you have to turn both on by hand, which is BTR5 or BT5R2. But don't quote me on that because I'm really not. It's been about 2 weeks since I've touched anything. Made the slide deck. It's like that's it. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Especially since this was the second slide deck. The first one had much different backgrounds. So again, looking at open ports, going back the other way, Asherah is actually built off of BT4, then upgraded to 5. And there's a lot more stuff open before this. But oh, look, HTTP is open, and it's open to everybody. Well, Asherah actually has a copy of Nessus running on it. And what did I say about Nessus earlier? It installs a default Apache config, makes it readable to everybody. Yes. Now, keep talking about TCP ports, but what about UDP? In this case, this is an Nmap UDP scan. It takes a lot longer than TCP. Out of the ports it ran it against, it found one open, port 68, which, if I remember right, is DHCP client. which you kind of need if you're running DHCP and not statically using a static IP address. And why does that matter? Well, for the most part, you're going to need to figure out what the IP address frame is on a network that you've never seen before. And the easiest way is to get the DHCP address from the DHCP server. Oh, look, I'm sending my name back to the new system. Oh, look, I'm sending my MAC address with it. Oh, look, I'm leaking my data left and right. But I don't have a choice because I don't know what the addresses are. And again, I'm enabling the firewall. Again, it's all the same commands. I don't want anybody to be able to log into the system without me knowing about it. I don't want people hitting my port 80. I don't want to be the target of somebody else while they're my target. Scanning still works. So I set the firewall up on Asherah. Remember I said any state that I establish, I create, I want to see it. My port scan still works, so I know it's working right. Coming back from the other direction. Well, actually, so my ports are still open. Oh, look, there's Apache. And it's still listening to every address out there. Coming back in the other direction. It's filtered. It just says that it sent a packet and didn't get anything back. Now that tells me I might have something that I can attack. It might mean I have to find the right IP address to attack it. Or it might just mean it's there filtered. Remember I said I want to see the logs? I want to see what's happening if somebody's trying to get into the system? Here it is. I'm doing a grep on dropped inbound packets. So normally I'd have this set up on a side window as a tail and watch messaging to see what's going on here. There was a lot more because it's dropping pretty much everything. It's dropping all the network traffic. So if you ever do a packet capture on a network, you'll see a bunch of NetBIOS stuff. You know, who's got this IP address, tell this server. Who's got this MAC address, tell the server. I'm dropping those too, but I wanted to show that I'm dropping port 80 in this case. So my destination port's 80, and you can see from the scan, it's being dropped. You're not getting through. SSH. I don't want people to be able to pull an SSH session, especially off of BackTrack, because it starts you up in X11. It starts you up in a nice, pretty GUI, depending on how you configured. Wait, no, BackTrack doesn't, but it's easy to start it. And most people start it anyway, so I just think it's automatically running. Because I don't think I've ever done anything BackTrack command line without going through the GUI at some point. X11 forwardings, no. But here it is. Can root log in? No. And when I was testing that, root's not allowed to log in, but I've also got deny host running at this point. So I actually locked myself out of the box. Trying to log into root. Deny host is set to say, as soon as anybody tries to log into root, you deny them. You put them in the host deny file. So it actually blocks you out there too. You're not going to be able to log in as root, but I couldn't do much else until I actually went back and did everything by hand. Setting up Apache. Okay, we're still listening everywhere. Anybody out there can hit my port 80, in theory, even though it's filtered at this point. That's great, but I don't want to trust my firewall to always be running. Something happens and it stops running for whatever reason. I still don't want somebody coming in. So I'm going through and I'm setting Apache up just to listen to the local host. So, you know, that's your basics there, right? Beyond that, you want to patch. And you want to patch immediately after install the first time. And you want to have a regular backup patch management system going from that point forward. You want to be able to sit there and say, this is up to date. You don't want to be, oh, I don't think Keith's in the room. You don't want to be like my buddy Keith, who was last night doing patching before the Armitage and Metasploit classes, because he hasn't patched for a couple weeks. You know what I mean? It's like, why am I putting this off to the last minute? It's like, I don't know, dude. Mine backs up every Saturday night. What are you talking about? Updating BackTrack, it's really simple. It's your app basic system. So it's apt-get update. It'll go hit the repository, say, tell me what's new. And then I think it's at the bottom down here. Yeah. What is new in this case? Nothing, because it was a recently updated system. Usually when you say upgrade, it'll give you a list of what needs to be upgraded and say, this is what I have. This is the new version. What can you do with it? You can update it. You can not update it, whatever. In this case, it's all up to date. Final steps, I'm going to set up deny hosts, or fail to ban. I'm going to set it up so you can't get into my box, and if I see you in the logs, it's going to automatically fail you. It's going to put you in the deny section, basically adding you to the firewall and saying you're not welcome here. I'm going to set up tripwire. That way if something changes, even if I'm the one that changes it, I'll know it changed. So if I've installed a new package and I didn't know it was going to touch Etsy password, I'll still know if password has changed because it'll show up in an email to me. It's a BackTrack box. I'm using it for attacks. I'm taking out the customer sites. I've got a known clean image here. So what am I doing? I'm taking that and I'm making a good backup. It's going to save me time down the road. If I need to reinstall this, like when I get back from the customer site, just to make sure it's still a clean image, I'm going to have an image of the box to drop in its place. And then I'm going to re-image that every time I patch it. So I've got a known good, and it's going to stay that way. Now when you're on site, Jada Zakiri, aka Boris, he likes to take a live CD and run it that way and then save everything to his USB. I'd still rather do a basic install, but I liked his idea of taking the USB because you can script everything to save to the USB drive and then hand your customer everything you've done. Here's every command I've ran. Here's everything I've got from your network. Here's everything I know about your systems. All in one place, all electronically, if you want to see what I've done. Questions? Yes?
When you said the live CDs, you don't recommend them because they leak data.
Yep.
Would that be like when remember you said the Hostnames VT and people is it more stuff like that or is it
Okay, so remember how I said DS Challenger is actually loaded on a portable USB drive? That was actually set for live boot. It was set up originally as hostname BT after the install, so it's leaking that. That's the F disk from DS Challenger before I changed its name. It's on here, right? But telling it to show me your disks, show me what you have locally. It's showing you every other disk I have on the system. This is my old backup system, so it has all my backup data on it still.
so if you
So yeah, you can speak, oh, okay, well, so, your question, I'm leaking data. What does the guy have here, right? Does it give me more information I know about him? I type mount. I tell it to mount this device. And now I've got access to everything on that hard drive. So I can go through and it's like, oh, look, here's this guy's tax files. Oh, look, his name's Chris Jenks. Oh, look, he lives here. Hello, police. Yeah, I got a hacker. Here's his name. Here's his address. Well, yeah, because I found his tax files on his machine. That's how I know.
so if you
Yeah,
if you configure an environment like ahead of time on a hard install, and then you make a live CD based off of it, would it have the same effect as
yes. So if you set your, if you make it, so it's basically imaging at that point. You've done your live CD install, and you said, make a copy and run it. That live CD still has access to everything underneath it. You haven't taken out fdisk -L. You haven't taken out mount. It's still there. It's going to be on the system. It's going to show you what you're asking about. Yes?
You were saying before about DHCP client being a necessary evil to try and find the IP ranges on the network that you're hooking yourself into. Wouldn't it make more sense? Leave yourself as INET static for your Ethernet interface and then just fire up Wireshark and look for broadcast to find the address ranges?
You could do it that way. I never actually thought of that. That's actually a good point.
Then you're not sending anything out. You found the address range you're looking for. You can set yourself in there.
Another way to do that would actually be to set yourself not so much as static, just leave it blank. Put yourself in promiscuous mode and just listen that way too.
Yeah.
One easier step. You could. Downside to that is, let's say Bob is scanning the network, right? And Bob has done your step. And then Alice comes in the morning, Bob's still connected, Alice has a statically assigned IP address. And Bob has taken her address because he saw that's the address range and didn't see any action on it.
Right.
But Alice had to come at 5 o'clock in the morning because she's got to get payroll out.
And
What
you
happens
can
when? What happens when?
IP collision.
Yep. So yeah, it's a necessary evil. There's ways around it. That's one way around it, but you brought in other things you've got to worry about at that point too. Anybody else? Yes, Wolf.
I've heard rumor that there may be a workshop. Is there truth to that rumor? Do you want to talk about that?
Okay, so we were actually saving this for Rats and Rogues. I've dropped hints about Rats and Rogues during the talk. I am Rattis. I am one of the 2 hosts of Rats and Rogues. Where's Justin?
He's in the Army workshop.
That's right, I saw him before I came in here.
The answer is follow Rats and Rogues and you'll find out.
So we were actually going to announce that this weekend, but we've had some podcasting issues. Rats and Rogues is the local podcast. We actually did all the B-sides interviews with Wolf's help. He's a tough slave driver, but he's a great guy to work for. It's like, dude, it's 12:05. Where's the episode?
It's supposed to be the one. I only did that 3 times.
I've only forgotten 4. Anyways, so we were going to announce it on the podcast. We're actually going to be doing MySec workshops coming up. Been talking about it with Wolf, and that was basically the next step from here. What's next? We're going to do workshops that help people build their skills. Has anybody listened to Rats and Rogues? How many people heard the career panel? 2. Okay, so recently we did a career panel after B-Side Chicago. We brought back the panelists from Chicago, and we threw Wolf and Lynn in there. And one of the things we said is we're not really mentoring properly in our own community. And how can we start bringing people up that, you know, they're saying 0% job loss or 0% unemployment in InfoSec. How many people here have something to do with InfoSec, but really don't have a job in InfoSec and are trying to get a new job in InfoSec? Handful of us, right? Well, you got a handful of us. That's more than 0%. The case is they want people to have more skills. So how do we do that? Well, we mentor, but we got to go beyond just mentoring people. We've actually got to do a little bit more than that. And Wolf just started me on a really nice rant. Sorry, guys. So what we're going to do is we're starting up workshops, and we're going to give you basic level skills. We're going to teach you how to set up a lamp stack. It's going to be a lot like this, but instead of just sitting here listening to me drone on and you guys nodding off, you're going to be setting the stuff up, and then we're going to come after you in a lab. And you'll have enough data to take that home and set up a lamp stack at home, to set up your own blog, to set up your own mail server, to set up whatever you want to do with your own server outside of work. Someplace to practice, something to say, yeah, so here's my website, go check it out if you're interested. You know, it's got my resume, it's got my slide decks, it's got my email address on it, you know, email me here at this domain name, we're good to go. So we're going to get you there. We're going to start with that. What were the other ones that we were talking about, Wolf?
So lamp stack, web app programming, possibly armature supply, things of those nature.
So watch the MySec mailing. Well, do we have a MySec mailing list yet? MySec, yeah, MySec's coming up. Listen to Rats and Rogues. Watch the Rats and Rogues website, so you don't even have to waste time listening to us if you don't want to. But watch the website. We'll make announcements there. Watch the IRC channel if you don't know what the MySec ICR channel is, or ICR channel. Yeah, if you don't know what the MySec IRC channel is, find us. We're on Freenode. It's pound MySec, M-I-S-E-C. Actually, D-Tom, come here. Come on, you're wearing the MySec shirt. Come on. It's not like you haven't been in front of people once already.
Clean the mud off.
No. But if Wolf wants to come up here. So we've got a joke in MySec. Wolf doesn't like hugs, so we're constantly teasing him. Pound MySec on Freenode, and you can find us.
I heard someone named Leonard was going to be doing a workshop too.
Yeah, what was that workshop, Leonard?
Oh yeah. Thank you. I forgot that.
So yeah, a lot of us here are part of MySec. It started last year at B-Sides. It's a growth out of this community, and everybody's welcome that's in the area. You know, our only membership requirement is you in Michigan, and even that's loosely based. VM escapes, But I just don't like it because, like I showed and like I was talking about, it's telling you that it's a VM box. So you've got the VM escape option, but you also know there's more of a juicy target there. Because if you remember the scan, when I started, that's going to show up. If I do something stupid or I've got some NTP running on the host, right, network time, it's going to leak at some point, and you've just made yourself twice the target you were before. Yeah, it's more than VM escapes because so Whistler leaks a lot of data. It's my day-to-day box. It NTP, automatic updates through Debian, several other things. So it's always hitting the network. It's always looking for ports. If Firefox is open, it's always hitting Gmail because I've got Gmail checker. So every 5 minutes, it sends a blast of packets out to Gmail. I'm using that on somebody's network at 2 o'clock in the morning. They know I'm there because I've got multiple addresses hitting. I left the slides out on purpose, but if I turn off the host machine's network, if I'm not using a dedicated USB network device at that point, either wireless or USB to Ethernet, I have no network connection. So I turn off the networking. It's turning the networking off, not just for the local box, but for all the hosts. The hosts can talk to each other, but they can't talk out. Now, like I said, you get around that by using an alpha card plugged into your USB device with the USB device shared to your virtual, but that's more work at that point. I got to remember to bring more stuff with me. Anybody else? Come on, somebody's got to have something. So, building on June, how do you mean?
Well, you still end up using the same card, but they use the hardware because it's reached.
You're still netting out at that point through your regular network interface. So you still have to have your regular network turned on if you want to talk to anything else besides what's on your machine. So I mean, for a lab, yeah, it's great. I love virtualization. It works great for labs. It works great to have multiple servers running off of the newer hardware because it can support it. I had production environments running on 4 blades at one point. 48 servers virtualized to 4 blades. The company loved it because it was saving a lot of money. But from an attack perspective, it's going to make you more of a target. And part of what we're trying to get around here is not to be the target. Shrink your own footprint so you're not standing out quite as much.
How easy is it setting up tripwire?
It has a basic config, but if you don't have the stuff installed, so on the Rats and Rogue server, it doesn't have anything related to X installed on it. It's an Apache server, doesn't need it. I have to actually go through and take all of those out or comment all of those out in the tripwire config. So it takes a little bit to get it set up. It's going to take you about a week of prep time until you get used to it. Then it'll take you about a day. But you've got to sit there and you've got to see what's it listening on, what's it looking at. And it's going to keep throwing you messages saying, hey, I can't find any of these files. Where are they? So it's a bit of a pain to set up, but it's worth it in the long run. A little bit of pain up front saves you a lot of pain later.
Available on Windows too, right?
I don't know if Tripwire works on Windows. I don't use Windows.
Yeah, I thought they had a version.
My day-to-day box is a Linux box. What's it tell you about me and Windows?
You love it?
Only to pop it. Thank you. Oh, no, I don't.
Don't do what I did. I turn around, I'm walking back.
No, but they are.